Fresno City Councilman Luis Chavez joining us here in studio this week. Always good having you on the program, sir.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. By what I've been reading, it looks like you're ready to ruffle some feathers around the city.
Some would call it ruffling feathers.
Poking the bear.
I call it bringing forward initiatives that will help the city.
So I read an interesting article before Christmas in GV Wire. Bill McEwen spoke to you. You're just not very happy right now with Fresno's general plan, which has been around for about 4 years now.
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, I was a staff member there when this conversation happened,
yeah.
And I remember the different options that we had. I've always been a supporter of option D, which was more of a hybrid approach where we do grow a little bit but also focus on infill, and we ended up with option A modified, which, you know, for folks that are watching us know that it was more of a focus on the infill stuff, the corridors, and I asked the question, I said, well, what has this plan yielded for the city of Fresno? And so part of this conversation, I'm going to throw up a big visual so that the community knows exactly what was the return, so to speak, on this plan. I don't think it's been very helpful for Fresno. We've seen growth happen on the outskirts of the city, Madera, Sanger, Kerman, growth that I believe should have happened in the city of Fresno.
All right, so that's interesting because right now, at the same time, we're seeing, you know, pretty much, what is it, record low unemployment numbers right now in the city. We're seeing these new jobs popping up from Amazon, Ulta, these big job centers that have crept up. Is that not adding any momentum into the communities that you represent?
So that's exactly what triggered this conversation for me. As I was out this past year canvassing neighborhoods, I knocked on somebody's door, saw the Ulta uniform.
Sure.
And they said, you know, we actually moved into the neighborhood, 5 minutes to get to work, 5 minutes to drop off the kids. We have shopping centers, we have supermarkets here. We're trying to build complete neighborhoods. And that's really what this conversation, I hope, will lead to, that we do build complete neighborhoods.
All right, so your specific problem, though, with the general plan, obviously, and again, for people who not know, big focus on infill development, kind of discouraging any sort of, you know, developing on the edges of the city. They wanted everything to be kind of like in where the city's already built up. They wanted to build within that.
That's exactly right. And I think there was a premise there that we can't do both. It's got to be either or. And I think it's both and and for that.
So you're calling for, and this is what I kind of took from what my reading of what you were saying was that in order to help everybody in South Fresno, you think that it needs to appeal better to higher income homeowners.
Absolutely. I'll bring
that doesn't, it's not happening at all right now.
That's not the case. And a case in point is we look at what happened downtown with the opening of the Fulton Street. We still got a number of vacancies there. We still don't have those big ticket stores that were promised when this conversation was going. And so what I would like to do, and I'll bring it down even more locally. So my district, as you know, I represent Southeast. I've got east of Peach and west of Peach. East of Peach is folks with a little bit more discretionary spending, more purchasing power, which is why we're getting the shopping center there with the amenities that we need. I think that attraction helps the neighborhoods that are adjacent to it, where those folks will have access to a lot of those amenities that you now have to drive 8 miles to get to River Park or get to Woodward Park or get to Northwest Fresno. I want to build that for Southeast Fresno and Southwest Fresno as well.
All right, so how does that happen though?
So give you a perfect example. So past year and a half, I went and spoke to major retailers, folks that bring stores to Fresno, and I made my pitch. And they say, you know, we love your passion about Fresno, but this is how the market works. We need folks with discretionary spending power. And you need to tell me how many rooftops you got and what the purchasing power of those folks are. That's what my goal is.
Because there's been such a focus on affordable housing that I know that the term market rate housing is being thrown around a lot more, that we need stuff that's more market rate as well. Because the people who are buying that, they're the ones that have the discretionary spending.
Absolutely. So we're looking at market rate, we're looking at that mid-range as well, and then also affordable. It needs to be all of the above, so to speak.
So why is this idea of yours controversial then at the city level?
Well, there were.
I mean, obviously the mayor helped pass the general plan, although he sounds like he's not completely set on it either. He sees it as something that's always going to be in flux.
I think there were a lot of organizations and folks that put a lot of work in, and what they try to do is well-intentioned to build more up, so to speak. But I think what happened is they try to fit a model that works maybe in the Bay Area, maybe in Portland and Fresno, and the market's just not there. And I think those statistics will show exactly that. going on in Fresno.
Let me ask you about parks. This has been so politically charged. You would have liked to have seen Measure P pass.
I would have liked to have seen more investment in parks. I mean, and here's the conversation, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why the Yes on P folks never really came and spoke to the council, just dealt with the mayor. That was their decision. But I think we now have an opportunity with Measure P not passing to have an approach that works for parks and for public safety.
All right, what is that approach then, something that the council can do, for example, that does not include putting together a new tax plan? Which may still end up happening, but is there anything in the meantime that can happen?
Obviously, we've got to prioritize the investments in public safety and parks. I think we'll have an opportunity with Proposition 68 to just pass and leveraging those dollars from the state. But I think the public safety tax and the park tax, at some point, we're going to have to combine those. And I think that's where the council will step in. We're going to allow the mayor that space to try to mend some fences and bring some folks to the table. And if that doesn't happen, then I think the council will step in.
Let me just ask you point blank, do you think the mayor and the police chief were wrong to kind of pit it as Measure P? If you vote yes on that, then really you're voting against public safety?
I don't think they were wrong. I think their approach was, you know, this Measure P is going to take away the taxing capacity for a public safety tax later. And I think the conversation during campaigns.
Do you think they were right, though? Do you think that was the right analysis on their part?
I think it was right from their vantage point. I mean, the mayor of Fresno is in charge of the whole city, the whole budget. He doesn't just think about parks exclusively. He has to think about public safety, about transportation, about potholes. And so I think that was the right call they did from their vantage point.
All right, so politically speaking, I know you got your hands full here with what you're trying to put together here in 2019. But I mean, you're an ambitious guy, you know, you've been in politics for a while. Where do you see your political career going? Do you see yourself going for a higher office at some time? I know you hate it when I put you on the spot and ask you about this sort of stuff.
No, it happens all the time. Don't worry. You know, I'm really happy right now being the council member of the area. I've got a list of about 6 projects I want to accomplish in Southeast Fresno. And once we get through that, then we'll look at what comes up. But I'm very happy to serve the rest of my tenure. And, you know, if I decide to continue in this, always happy to look at something, but if not, more than happy to go back to regular life, which was what I was doing before this anyway.
Luis Chavez, Fresno City Council member, always nice having you on the program.
Thank you for the invitation. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I appreciate that. And coming up after the break, we're going to continue talking about the biggest stories of 2018. Where does the election of Governor Gavin Newsom fall? Our panel returns right after this.